Hi guys, this is Hero. How's everyone doing today? So today I have a very important video, which is Jupiter's retrograde transit in its own sign of Pisces, okay? Not only does Jupiter never leave its own sign of Pisces throughout this retrograde transit, but it never leaves the Nakshatra of Uttarabhadrapada. Okay, so this to me is very important and significant. Now, Uttarabhadrapada is owned by Saturn, right? Now, Saturn owns the first full nakshatra of every water sign, okay? This is important. Why? Well, we know that water signs in general represent moksha energies. And moksha energies is something that the common general public is not too fond of, okay? Even for those of us who are in the spiritual community heavily, can view some of these moksha energies as pretty harsh, okay? This is why the 8th and the 12th house, which could be connected to Scorpio and Pisces energies, are dusanas, okay? These are the worst houses, at least from a material standpoint, mostly, for in the whole horoscope, okay? So Saturn owns the first full nakshatra of every water sign. Why? Because the ego and the mind don't want to let go of anything, right? They don't want to do anything. But we have to let go of some stuff, right? This is what Uttarabhadrapada represents. It represents the things that we need to let go of. Pisces represents just letting go of everything as a whole. Uttarabhadrapada section specifically represents letting go of the things that we need to let go of. Now, Saturn owns this. Why? Because Saturn, it owns the two signs naturally opposite of sun and moon, okay? It doesn't really care what the sun and moon or mind and ego want, okay? It just kind of has the karmic strength and the discipline and the determination to do whatever it needs to do. And for Uttarabhadrapada zone, Saturn will help let you let go of the things that you need to let go of, okay? But Jupiter owns the sign of Pisces, okay? The sign lord kind of represents which planet is kind of owns or governs that energy, right? So Jupiter represents Jupiter naturally represents Pisces, which is letting go. But the nakshatra lord represents mainly which planet has to be the most on board to kind of make this energy range the most successful for any planet. Okay, so Saturn kind of has to be the most on board for planets to successfully detach from the things that they need to detach from just because of its natural characteristics, okay? So I hope you guys kind of got a quick taste of how this sign system and the nakshatra system are somewhat independent, but they work together, okay? And in their own ways. But they also work together. Now, Jupiter, as you might wonder, owns not only Pisces, but it also owns the first pada of every water sign. This is very important. Why? Let's just say Purva Bhadrapada. Okay, let's just take that as an example, just because it comes before Uttara Bhadrapada. So Jupiter owns the last three. Its nakshatra, its first three padas are the last three padas of an air sign. Why? Air signs represent expansion. So Rahu is the only planet with the full nakshatra in an air sign, right? Because Rahu loves expansion, right? But Jupiter owns the next three padas, the last three padas of an air sign, as well as the first pada of a water sign. Why? Jupiter is the only planet, let's just say for Purva Bhadrapada, I'll use an example, but Jupiter is the only planet that kind of has the awareness to know, okay, how much expansion we should do, or how much expansion is remaining. And it's the only planet that also has the wisdom to know when to stop and when to start detaching. Okay, that's why it owns the first pada of a water sign. Okay, so for example, Purva Bhadrapada, it owns the first three padas of the last three padas of Aquarius. So it is so aware of, okay, this is kind of like the karma we have left. It's the end of Aquarius. This is kind of the karmas we have remaining, and because it's the first. It also owns the first pada of Pisces. Jupiter says, okay, hey, we did all our karma. Now we need to detach. It's the only planet that has that wisdom, okay? And after Jupiter kind of knows when to wrap it up and, decides to call it quits, then it can pass the torch to because it owns Saturn. I mean, it owns Pisces, Jupiter, but it kind of passes the torch from a nakshatra sense to Saturn and say, okay, now you kind of have to help out in making sure that we can detach from all the things that we need to detach from, okay? So I hope that made sense. Now, let's put Jupiter in this Uttarabhadrapada Nakshrata, okay? So like I said, Uttarabhadrapada naturally represents letting go of the things we need to. So Jupiter, which is the planet not only of letting go, but learning the things that we need to learn, okay? Gaining wisdom, gaining awareness and connection to the higher self, all this kind of stuff. We put that in Uttarabhadrapada, and now we get a very strong placement of Jupiter, which is the guru, kind of being more conscious and more aware of what we need to let go of, or the things that we need to let go of, okay? This could include things like our daily habits, certain things we say, certain people we hang around with, anything really, okay? But just anything that we need to let go of, okay? We could become more aware. Now, when it goes backwards, retrograde, and I discuss more retrograde energies in my retrograde video, as well as also in my Rahu Dasha part 2 video, or my most recent Rahu Dasha video. I'm not sure if I put part 2 in the title or not. But when it goes backwards, things are happening a lot more karmically. What does this mean? Just in a general synopsis. Things will happen for this situation. Let's just take Jupiter retrograde and Uttarabhadrapada. So I just explained Jupiter and Uttarabhadrapada going forward represents kind of gaining awareness of the things you need to let go of. When it goes backwards, retrograde, things will happen in your life to kind of make you suddenly more aware. Okay, so and where these things could happen, you have to see where Pisces is in your chart. But things will happen where you'll be like, oh man, maybe I should really stop doing this. Maybe I should really stop saying this. Maybe I should really stop hanging out with these people. Things like this, right? So for example, Pisces is in your 7th house. Let's just say you're a Virgo Lagna. Pisces in your 7th house, then maybe there's certain people that you might need to detach from. Okay. Even let's just say if also, and really, really important when it comes to these transits, look at your ascendant degrees. Okay. For example, if Pisces is in your 4th house, you're Sagittarius Lagna, but your ascendant degrees is 20, your houses don't really start kind of to an extent. There's some astronomical influence here, but as a general rule, they might not start until 20 degrees. So if in the Lagna chart, you have Pisces in your 4th house, but your ascendant degrees is 20, your 4th house might not fully start until 20 degrees Pisces. So everything before that is kind of 3rd house influence. So just keep that in mind, okay, when you're looking at this. But let's just say 4th house. I'll just take another example. There might be things you need to detach from when it comes to your house or your mother or something like this. Or let's just say it is in your 3rd house, or your ascendant degrees is real high. Even though Pisces is in your 4th house in the Lagna, you might think in your Bada chart it's still kind of transiting your 3rd house. This could represent things like self-efforts and younger siblings. Okay, most likely in this situation, younger siblings, or possibly why, or even self-efforts to an extent, but things that are connected with both home and 3rd house things, like younger siblings, or like self-efforts related to home or mother. Okay, you might want to stop doing bad habits to not influence anybody negatively in your home. Okay, or stuff like that. Or you might want to stop certain bad habits, or saying wrong things to your family members, like younger siblings or mother. Or you might want to stop. You might want to stop doing stuff so that you can expand yourself a little bit more properly in whatever way your chart shows. You also have to look at natal planets in these houses and stuff like that. There's a lot of elements here, but I'm just kind of giving you in general. Okay, in general. Now I'm going back to the real in general. Things will happen in your life that when this retrograde starts, that will make you a lot more aware of the things that you need to detach from. Okay, the things that you kind of need to stop doing to an extent. You might interpret things to detach from as things to stop doing. Okay, so just a heads up. So that's kind of this thing at a general sense. Now we also need to take a look at Saturn, right? Why? Saturn's in Capricorn, retrograde, strong, aspecting, throwing a 3rd aspect on Pisces, right? So when Saturn throws a 3rd aspect, it's a special aspect, right? No other planet throws a 3rd aspect. And it's special, why? Because 3rd house naturally represents self-efforts, as I just said. So Saturn, wherever it's placed, 3rd from it, you got to put a little bit more effort in that area, right? So when it's real strong in Capricorn, it's real discipline, Saturn, you need to put in a little bit more effort to detach. Now, Jupiter, strong in Pisces and also in Saturn's Nakshatra, is pretty on board with this. Okay, so this is good because you got to look at everything in a bigger picture. So Saturn is real strong, disciplined, and Jupiter is saying, hey, you know what? I'll detach from whatever I need to help you become a little bit more disciplined. Okay, so I hope this made sense. Moving on to the next most important aspects of this, I would say, is Rahu's 9th aspect from Aries that throws on to Sagittarius, and also Mars around the second week of this transit starting. This Jupiter retrograde transit occurs from end of July 28th to end of November, around November 23rd. So about 4 months. At the beginning of August, sometime within 2 weeks of this transit starting, Mars enters Taurus, okay? And for the remainder of this transit, it's either in Taurus or in Gemini, progressive or retrograde, right? And why is this important? Because when Mars is in Taurus, it throws an 8th aspect on Sagittarius. And when it's in Gemini, it throws a 7th aspect on Sagittarius. So it's also influencing this Jupiter. But so it's also influencing Sagittarius directly, I guess you can say Jupiter. But Rahu, I was covering Rahu first. So Rahu, because it's in the same sign the whole time and it's there the whole time, it's an Aries, right? So Aries represents what? Starting new things. So why does it throw a 9th aspect? Because depending on the things you start, you learn from them, right? It's kind of like the cycle of action and planning. I made a video on this. So when Rahu tries to create an illusion to start something, you could, because of Jupiter's strong Pisces placement, because Rahu throws a 9th aspect on Sagittarius, and you could kind of understand that awareness of, because Jupiter's retrograde as well, of, okay, what am I learning from what Rahu's trying to tempt me to start? And is this a good idea in my detachment? And is there anything that I need to detach from in order to, lessen Rahu's energies? Okay, so this is an option you have. Okay, with some parts of astrology, you have this kind of option to become a little bit more aware, I guess you can say, so that you can make these choices for yourself. So I hope that made sense, this Rahu, throwing that 9th aspect on Sagittarius, and how we can learn from that and conquer Rahu. Okay, now Mars in Taurus. Mars doesn't really like Taurus, right? Because it's its opposite sign, okay? I made a video on opposite signs in my exaltation and debilitation and own sign video. But when Mars is in its opposite sign, it doesn't like it because Mars naturally wants to be a little bit more intuitive, which is why it owns Scorpio. But because it's in Taurus, it's kind of focused all its energies on being as stable as possible, okay? Which it doesn't really want to do. But Mars throws a 8th aspect onto Sagittarius. Now, what you can kind of conclude from this is that, okay, Mars is throwing a 8th aspect on Sagittarius. So because your Mars is being real stable and it doesn't really like it, you're not really learning, that intuition is not really being developed, and you're not really learning too much. Okay, so what you could do here is you could say, because Mars is so focused on stability, and it's kind of frustrating throwing that 8th intuitive aspect on Sagittarius, you could, because that Jupiter is in Pisces and Uttarabhadrapada, you could say, okay, Mars is so focused on stability. What am I doing to keep myself stable, mainly physically, but keep myself stable overall in general, that doesn't really serve me? Okay, we're just developing that awareness, which is what Jupiter means when it's in Uttarabhadrapada, okay? So you kind of want to take notes on that. And then when Mars moves in Gemini, it throws a 7th aspect. Now, the 7th aspect when Mars is in Gemini throughout this transit, I think it's in Gemini from like mid-October to sometime in November, shortly before this transit ends. It throws a 7th aspect, which is not a special aspect, okay? The only reason any planet throws a 7th aspect is because every planet naturally influences the other side of whatever axis it sits on. So when Mars is in Gemini, it naturally aspects the other side, which is Sagittarius. So Gemini represents self-efforts, expansion, etc. So when Mars is in there, kind of causing its frustration, I guess you can say, it influences your learning. So what you kind of want to do here, it's a two-sided coin, because it's like I said, it's throwing an aspect at the same time as Rahu. But whatever Mars tries to do to expand your life, you're kind of going to, well, the reason it's a two-sided coin is because Mars is also an intuitive planet, okay? So you're kind of going to want to, when Mars is in Gemini at the end of this transit, you're kind of going to want to make a little decision. Okay, the things that, the expansion that I'm trying to do, is it more Rahu trying to tempt me, and do I need to detach from some stuff, or is it Mars also trying to cause this problem, because Mars also owns Aries, right? So it's kind of having that Rahu influence, and it's also that Saturn is real focused on being disciplined, right? Or is there something actually that genuinely, because Mars is still a very strong planet, that I need to kind of expand, that is going to allow me to learn and further my detachment journey, right? Like, do I need to start, maybe not start, but do I need to expand? So I need to maybe go to temple a little more, okay? But because Rahu's in Aries, it could try to trick you, right? It could be like, hey, maybe I need to do certain things. Like maybe I need to hang out with more people that I shouldn't, and it'll kind of try to trick you or something like that, or do things that it shouldn't because you shouldn't, because it'll try to trick you. But you kind of want to just really hone in and see, should I really do this? Is it really helping my detachment journey? Okay, that's what the Mars and the Aries, its two aspects on Sagittarius are, and I kind of covered the difference between the Taurus and the Gemini aspect. Okay, the Gemini more, you kind of, Taurus, the more you kind of have to see, okay, what is going on in my life that I might need to let go of because I'm so focused on stability and expansion. When Mars is in Gemini, I need to see, okay, the things I'm trying to expand on, is it really, I need to expand on that? Is it really helping my intuition? Is it really helping me detach? Or is it just that Rahu playing its games and, trying to get me to do things that are not really going to teach me anything or cause me to detach at all, okay? One other quick note about this transit. Jupiter aspects, there's a 5th aspect on Cancer, a 7th on Virgo, and a 9th on Scorpio, okay? The Sun, Moon, and Mercury throughout this transit start at Cancer for the most part and end at Scorpio, okay? And each of those 3 aspects of Jupiter's are all very close together. They only have one sign in between each. So Jupiter is heavily affecting Mercury, Venus, and Saturn. Mercury, Venus, and Sun the whole time, right? As you guys know, Mercury and Venus stay real close to the Sun, right? Because the rational intelligence serves the ego mainly, and you kind of enjoy, which is Venus, for the ego to an extent. Not as much as the rational intelligent Mercury. Mercury stays a lot more closer to the Sun also, but Venus also to an extent serves the ego, okay? So these 3 planets are transiting from Cancer to Scorpio, these 5 signs, and 3 of the signs Jupiter aspects, okay? I obviously, for this time's sake of this video, cannot explain every single combination of what's going to occur at all the times, especially since this is more for Jupiter. But I will say this. Whenever these 3 planets, together or separate, transit these 3 signs, there will be some increased, I guess you can say, connection to higher consciousness, or you'll learn more a little bit about those things, or you'll be able to, you'll be a little bit more aware of what's going on in that department of things, okay? And in a benefic way, which is good. Now, you're going to have to see, first of all, those planets, when they're together or when they're together combined in a certain fashion, or individually transiting through these signs, how they behave first before you can kind of incorporate Jupiter's influence on those signs. But I just wanted to point that out, and I'll give one example. Let's just say hypothetically, Mercury's transiting through Virgo, right? It's its own Mutrikon sign. It gets exalted also. It's going to be very good, right? Because you have Mercury, the rational intelligence, in its favorite sign, and then Jupiter on the other side in its own sign, on the other side of the axis. So it's like Jupiter is able to kind of detach and Mercury's going to be real smart about, you know, its needs versus its wants. Great time, right? So Jupiter and Mercury are kind of going to influence each other in a very benefic fashion. But let's just say Venus is transiting Virgo. The Jupiter is also kind of going to throw a benefic aspect on that Virgo, right? So Venus, let's say it gets debilitated in Virgo, right? Because the planet of enjoyment, it's kind of it's not able to enjoy. It's kind of thinking, okay, how can I enjoy more, blah, blah. It's being more practical. It doesn't want to be practical. It just wants to enjoy. Yeah, Jupiter's kind of going to throw its influence on there and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, sure, like, we're kind of overthinking about our enjoyment, but at the end of the day, let's just let go and enjoy, okay? That's kind of what it can do. Now, obviously, in this certain situation, or actually in any of the situations where the planets transit Virgo, every planet throws a seventh aspect, so it will slightly affect the Jupiter as well. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, especially, but when those three planets transit Cancer or Scorpio at the beginning and end of this transit, just keep that in mind that Jupiter will affect those three planets a lot and increase a lot of the awareness related to those planets separately or in some combined fashion in those planets' energies in those signs, okay? And just one more quick note, when it's in Virgo, which is the seventh house from Jupiter in this transit, those planets also affect Jupiter a little bit, right? So if it's Mercury, it's going to be real good. If it's Venus, it's going to be not so great because Venus is debilitated, but it is a natural benefic, so it's not going to be super harsh, especially because that Jupiter is so powerful and so benefic and so strong in Pisces, okay? So just wanted to point that out. So I think I covered about everything in this video. If you have any questions or comments, you know, you can feel free to let me know. And until next time, talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for watching.